Good morning, everybody. So good morning. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melka's application team, and we're doing our design shop talk today to see what questions you guys might have and see if we can get any of them answered. We'll kind of start off with ones that were sent in ahead of time. We are live on both Facebook and YouTube. If you have questions while we're live, feel free to type them in on the comments, and I'll try to answer them while we're live. Please don't send them privately. I don't see those. So just send them over, type them in on either Facebook or YouTube on the live, and they'll pop up on my other screen. I do have another screen over to my left here, so if you see me looking shifty, I'm looking at my other monitor here by myself, so I have to monitor it over there. All right, so let me check both platforms and make sure we're up. There's YouTube, there's Facebook, so it looks like we're good. And hi, Scott, thanks for joining today. All right, so let's see. Oh, I did have a reminder. We do have a drawing going, so be sure to submit your story. And for the drawing, we've got some pretty cool prizes. You can get a DS11 or money off of stuff on Shop Melco. So be sure to submit your story and participate and be entered into the drawing. Okay. All right. So what else do we have question wise? Hi, Curtis on YouTube. Thanks for joining today. All right. So first question that was sent in was, can you give a few steps on how to take a previously designed file that sews out looser rather than open, and I want to make it more dense and crisp up some lines? Okay, so I think what you're saying is, you're sewing something out and you're seeing too much fabric underneath and you want to add stitches. You want to put the stitches closer together. All right, so if you remember from previous discussions when we talked about, if those are the sorts of things, that means you got to decrease your density. You have to add stitches, make the stitches closer together. That's all taking your density number and lowering it. So let's come over to DesignShop. I opened up an EXP file because EXPs are expanded, which means while this is available as an OFM, here it's expanded. So let's say the birdie. All right, so we do have some videos on working with expanded files, so maybe Scott, if we'll get you those links. But so if you look at our little bird here, and let's say I want to change the density of it. So that is the wrong area. Right click, go to scale. All right, so select what you want to modify. Right click, you go to scale. And then what you'll see here is you've got some areas where you can play with it down here, right? So you can adjust your density. So right now my stitch count for the bird is down at the bottom at 812. So I'm going to be silly about it. I did 80%, which that's the wrong way, right? So because I'm getting rid of stitches. So if I undo that and now right click, scale down here, let's say 120. So that moves the stitches closer together. It adds more stitches along there. So that's what you're going to want to do to change your densities. I do recommend, like if you want to do the whole design, you can right click, select at the whole design level, right click, go to scale. Personally, I just recommend modifying the things that you want to change rather than the entire design. Why? Because every time you work with expanded files, you're changing how whoever digitized it first designed it. So sometimes some parts might be good, other parts might not be. So I like just messing or adjusting the parts that I know need to have changes. Edra, thanks for joining. I'm glad you're liking it. Let us know if you have any questions and we'll be happy to help. All right, so good morning, Gabby. Let's see, what else do we have? All right, so that's how you modify the density. So let's do it one more time. Let's say on the leaves, right click, scale, density. These are columns. So 120, it adds stitches. There you go. All right, so it does depend on what type of stitch you're working with, columns versus fills. Okay, so how do I take a JPEG from clip art to embroidery file? All right, so that's there. In the training videos, there is a section on digitizing. So how do we get to the training videos? Let's see. Let me get a web page up so I can show you. Okay. So if you go to milcouniversity.com and then click on media, there's these playlists. All right. So if you kind of work down through the videos, that goes through the entire learning design shop. So it's these first sections up here might be a little counterintuitive, because what that's working with is you already have a file. So what you're specifically asking, how do you create from scratch? It's very helpful if you know how to work with DesignShop before you jump into creating your own designs. So I highly recommend starting with these so you understand what's going on. You can work with files that are already there. You understand what density is. You know what pull compensation is. You know what underlay is and how those affect your designs. So those sorts of things are really important. How to work with wireframes, because all of that you'll need when you're going into digitizing. So when you start with this digitizing video, it'll talk about all the art types, how to get that artwork in your JPEG, whether you're working a vector or a JPEG, those sorts of things. So if you haven't taken a look at these, be sure to go through them. The videos are really well put together, and you'll learn all the basics of how to use the tool. What does that mean? How to click through all these buttons to create designs. So when you're digitizing, you bring in some artwork. So you go open up whatever image you want, right? And there's the Earth Day. So that's the actual example on there. So then it's just a matter of working through it, planning out how you want it to digitize. What do you want to be columns? What size is it? Is this going to be for a left chest or a jacket back? So go through those videos. It kind of talks through all of that. We do also have some start to finish kind of digitizing videos where we just work through a few projects on YouTube. So you can also watch those. But I would highly suggest going through from top of that playlist down through the bottom, and then maybe running through a few of the videos where they're examples, starting a project from start to finish, do a few of those, and then it really comes down to practice. Okay. So that's how I would suggest working through them. All right. So I had probably 3 or 4 questions that are all from one person. I wanted to put them on here so you knew I wasn't ignoring them or anything like that. But I don't have a machine hooked up here where I can go look through them. And the more I read through all the issues you're having, some of them, it doesn't make sense. It almost sounds like your OS color charts got removed somehow. So what I would suggest doing is calling tech support and having them log into your computer to check the installs and see if there's something up with your color data, because I don't see any of this. Now, what they're saying is, it's defaulting to the system colors rather than to the thread color that was used in the OFM. So what I would suggest is calling tech support. In general, what the colors that are down here, if you come into tools, settings, I have a screen right here. So tools, settings, if you uncheck this box, use colors from design, then what that's good for is as you're doing your coloring. All right. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm making you dizzy. Notice how this thread tree is not colored. This one is colored in the simplified view, or in the picture you had that you sent me right here. See how that thread tree is all colored? So if you uncheck that box when you set your color sequence and hit apply, whatever colors you have selected. So needle 1 is going to be on color 5, which is white. And then color 2 is going to be on color 9, which is this light blue. So when you hit apply, as long as that box is unchecked, when it displays on your screen, it will show in those whatever colors you have here. So if you chose by accident 10 and 13, it would show up as green and blue rather than the white and blue. Now, if you tell it to use colors from design, whatever is down here, it's what it's going to select. Notice this says exact match. If your color tree isn't colored exactly, it's not going to choose a color, and then you're going to get errors that pop up. Okay, so the things You can uncheck that and tell it to auto match colors, and it will look for the closest RGB. So these are all things you can use. But honestly, the more I read this, the more it's confusing me. I would need to see it and look at it. So what I would suggest you doing is calling tech support, because like I said, I don't see it out there with my equipment. So hopefully they can log in for you. We did get you a link to the tech support resources, so you can get their phone number there and give them a call, let them log in and see if maybe it's something as simple as the install for your OS, the color charts aren't in the right folder. It might be that simple. Okay. Thanks, Lisa, for joining us. All right. So let's see. All right. I jumped around. I'm having issues with the tie-ins on small lettering. All right. So small lettering, what tie-ins should you use? So your tie-ins are those first little stitches that are made when your machine starts sewing. Your tie-off is the lock stitch that locks the thread together before it's trimmed so it doesn't wash out. All right, so your tie-in stitches. For small lettering, I would recommend using a style 1 or a style 3 and just see which those you like better and work better for you. Style 5 is a great lock stitch, but it's very aggressive and it tends to be large. So let's look at where you can see what these styles are. So if I right click, I'm just going to right click on the lettering. All right. And then down here, you'll see this tie in and tie off. I have a really bad habit of calling them all knots, like tie a knot. One's a tie in, one's a tie off. So I apologize if I keep on calling them knots. All right, so how do you know what these things are? Right down here, there's a button that says Show Tie Types. If you click on that, it'll kind of explain what each one of these is doing. All right, so a style 1, it's going to do a back stitch, a half stitch forward, jump to the starting point, and sew. So that's style 1. It tends to be more in line with your stitching, so it's less visible. It's like a small dimple. Your style 2 is a single back stitch. I don't ever use that one. I don't like it personally. Style 3 does 2 back stitches before it sews. So for your small lettering, I would recommend using either a style 1 or a style 3 for your tie-in. A style 5 makes an X, which is fantastic, except it's really aggressive and it tends to hang out of things. And what does that mean? So here, if I just write T. Let's do a T and make that a tie-in. We're going to change those both to a style 5. All right, let's go look at them. See my tie off right there? It puts a little stitch hanging off because it's making an X. So while it's a really aggressive and good lock stitch, it doesn't work for all things because, one, it's going to put a big dimple, which personally I'd rather have a dimple than things washing out, so that doesn't bother me. But having little tags and stitches hanging off isn't the cutest look, right? Okay, so let's see. There's that. So for small lettering, I would recommend you try a style 1 or a style 3 and see which ones you like. We talked about that one. All right, we have a few questions typed in, and then I'll jump back to these. So one is, what program do I need to be able to quilt a quilt top? Well, are you going to quilt it on your embroidery machine or on a long arm? Long arms run their own strangeness that I don't know a lot about. A friend of mine does that, so I tend to just give my quilts to her if I want it done on a long arm. If you're doing it on your embroidery machine, then DesignShop will do that for you. And a follow-up question on that, how do you move the needle so it starts at the exact same spot, so the first stitch is where the needle is. All right, so that's a good one. One, it's going to be associated with your laser alignment and how you set up the actual sew file. So laser alignment, notice we've got these options. The one that you'll want is laser left, laser left, laser right. Laser left, laser right, laser bullseye. Okay, so that's the one you're going to want to use to make it all basically left justify. All right. So that's the command sequence that I would recommend. There is a video that was done maybe 2 years ago now. It's not a quilting thing, but the same technique is there. So it was a ribbon that was done with some holly leaves on it. So the same technique is there in a video. So be sure to check that one. Rhonda, you're asking which design shop. You'll need any above light will do it. So so anything higher than light, so not or lettering, you'll need something that digitizes, right? So when you're setting up quilting patterns, let me go open my horsey. Where's my horse? Where'd I put it? Horse. I'm sure you guys get tired of seeing my horse, but I like it. And it's convenient for quilting. All right. So why did I pull this up? Because it's a continuous quilting pattern. And I can show you how to set it up for continuous quilting. All right. So I did this as a decorative, but it's the same idea. So when you're doing a continuous quilting, whatever pattern you're going to want to do, you'll want to make sure you know where it starts and stops. And here is how you need to set it up so that your needle always is at the first stitch, right? So first stop when you're creating your pattern. So how did I draw this one? I used this guy right here, the walk input. And you can use a plain old running stitch, which is a normal, or you can use a bean stitch, which gives you a thicker line. It really depends on the look you want. Do you want just a single row of thread for your quilting, or do you want it to go back and forth to make that line thicker? Okay. Is one right or wrong? It really doesn't matter. It's your personal preference. And then you draw your shape. All right. So I'm going to bypass half my shape here, but just to give you an idea, you draw whatever you're going to draw, and then you're going to end it. Now notice my start and stop have to be on the same line. Okay. That's important for decoratives, but that will help you with creating a repeating pattern as well. So when it starts here, it ends on the same line. The other key to setting it up for continuous sewing is making sure that first stitch is right where these intersect. Okay, so I need to make sure my first stitch is where the center of the hoop, essentially. So where these two red lines intersect, that's where I need to start. My last stitch needs to be on that same horizontal line. All right, so what do I do now when I want to go sew this, right? So if I'm doing this as a continuous sewing, so I'm going to do a hoop, I'm going to move it over, do a hoop, move it over, do a hoop, that sort of thing. You're going to, of course, either chalk or tape your quilt so that you have a straight line, so you know where you want it to start, right? You'll hoop it on that line that you have chalked or drawn. You're going to do a laser left, a laser right, and a laser bullseye on that line. Does it matter where? No, just do your widest span because that's going to get it the straightest line, okay? And it'll rotate and line it up and move over so that the needle is right in the center. You know, it's right at your first stitch. What do you do then? You just wiggle it around until the needle is right where you want it. So it goes into the last stitch. Okay. So if you did not quite align it right, that's okay. Just scooch it over until it's where you want it to go. Then you hit start. Now this is all sewn. All right. I'm waving at my computer screen. You guys can't see that. All right, so this is all sewn. Now I want to sew one over here. Well, I still have my chalked line. I'm going to laser left on this point, go somewhere down my tape line or chalk line, laser right, laser bullseye. It's going to move it so that now this design, copy paste, when it actually aligns it, it'll be positioned right there. So let's say I accidentally didn't align it quite right and it's over here. I just wiggle my hoop using my hoop and arrow buttons until the needle is right above where I want it. And now hit go and it will sew. All right. So we do have some videos and links for you on laser alignment, but like I said, there is an example that shows the same technique with some holly, and it was a Christmas type thing. It was done on some ribbon, and it's the exact same technique: laser left, laser right, laser bullseye. Sew your pattern, move it over, and go again. Okay. Any other questions on that? We did get you a link to laser alignment in the comments as well. All right, Christine, did that help? Hopefully that made sense. I know I tend to wave my hands at the screen, which I try to remind myself to grab. What am I calling the bullseye button? This guy right here. Looks like a bullseye. So on my keypad, let's go look at it. Here's my keypad. So when you go to you're going to use your hoop button and these arrows to navigate until you get to the left point. And then you're going to go click on the laser button here and the left. Then you're going to use your hoop and arrows, move to the other point, on your chalk line, somewhere over on the right-hand side. And then you're going to go laser. Oops, sorry. So you're going to laser left, laser right. And those are clicked at the same time. After you do that laser left, laser right, then you do laser bullseye, which is this guy right here. To drop the needle, you have to be in the maintenance mode to do it. There's no command for that. You can either execute a trim, which is silly, but you can't. That will do it. Or what I always do is I just hit the E-stop, reach under the machine, and rotate it down on the bar that's directly above your the thing with the bobbin, the lower arm. So there's a bar straight up. I just rotate it. That drops the needle. If I don't like where it is, that's okay. Release the E-stop. It'll pick the needle back up, wiggle it around, and then E-stop, lower it. That's how I do it. It's quicker than walking to my computer. So that's what I do. All right, let's see. Curtis, hopefully that helped clear up my bullseye. I tend to call this one the hammer because it looks like a hammer. Anyway, that's a bullseye, the laser, needles, it's a hoop button, and my arrows. Anyway, that's my silly terminology. All right, so let's see. Where was I? Okay. I'm just looking through questions, see if I missed anything else. No. All right. So we did those. If you have questions, again, type them in. How do you digitize Cyrillic letters? I know you sent in this as what you were trying to do. Honestly, I would not do this as a cross stitch. This guy right here, I would just use my walking stitches and do them that way. So what I mean by that is, whatever that letter might be, I would literally just draw it. And I should have planned that out a little bit better, but for instance, like that. So if it's a really ugly version of that A, but you get the idea. I mean, I didn't trace art, so that's not too horrid. So honestly, how I would do that font is I would just trace, draw the text out in the size you want. Using it on a grid, and making sure all the letters are appropriate, the sized the same. Helps if I can use some words today. Tricks you can always use for when you're doing these sorts of things is use your vectors so that you can keep everything consistent. So if I copy and paste that, let's say I want all of them to be that height, I can have those, and then let's say I want the mid always to be here. So if I'm going to draw a B, now I've got my little reference lines. Same with the characters that hang out underneath. If I want them all to reach down to here, like a lowercase y, I tend to use, rather than using a grid, I tend to draw vector lines like this and just use the vector lines. To draw a vector line, I know I did that quick. If you hold down the walk stitch, right here is your vector line input. And that just draws art right here. So it doesn't sew, it's just something that is there as a reference that you can leave in the file and use it as a reference as you're digitizing. I use them a lot for lining up things, for making sure I have consistency. If I'm doing fonts, make sure, like I said, all my elements are on the same size and whatnot. I'll tend to digitize everything in a single file and then go add them to the alphabet editor. I know we have some videos on the alphabet editor, so if you do a font like this, including the Cyrillic characters, all the different ones, you would just, draw them out. So I know that was your original question was, how do you do these with all these Cyrillic characters? And like I said, this looks like more like a bean stitch type sewing, so that's what I would do with it. The cross stitch, is there a video on cross stitch? I don't know. Scott, is there? If not, we can see about making one. That would be a good little one to do. I don't know if there is one. So, but we'll take a look at that. Okay. But yeah, the cross stitch tool is available here. And when doing, real quick, what you were saying, you're having a hard time getting the grid to line up. I'll say, quite frankly, I don't ever use the grid when I'm doing, and trace it when I'm doing cross stitch. I'll tend to actually get a grid paper, literally, like the stuff my kids use, and plan it out how I want it to look by coloring in boxes. So that way, when I come over here and I go, okay, I want to do an A, I know I'm going to do those three, that one, whatever it's going to be. I've already decided that on my, all right, that's really ugly. But anyway, you get the idea. I've already decided it on my little grid. All right, so Scott said we're going to add it to our list. We don't have a cross stitch video handy. But that's how I always do it, is I plan it out ahead of time. And then, digitize it accordingly based on what I've scribbled out on my little pad. Okay. Anyway, and you would just work through your design that way. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Why doesn't my thread get cut when it goes to cut the thread? I would have to know more info to help you with that. What machine, what software. What I would suggest, honestly, is it would be helpful if you call tech support. They're fantastic, all the folks there, and can work through it for you. It might be something very simple as, if you've got an S95, if you have the new MPT machines, the needle plate, the knife is on the back of the needle plate. So if you removed it to clean it or do the oiling and put it back on, and the knife isn't over the little stud on the back, it's not going to execute the trim appropriately. So it might be something that simple. But the best thing you could do is give the tech support folks a call. Like I said, they're all really great and they can work through it. They can even log into your computer, watch what's going on, and kind of help troubleshoot your specific machine and what issue you're having. So that's where I would suggest starting. Because quite frankly, there's a bunch of trimmers. We've got the big red trimmer, the XT trimmer has the push-pull cables with an individual selector and a knife. The XTS has a single module with, again, push-pull cables, but it's a single module. And then you have the S95, which is built into the hook, and then you have the MPT. Anyway, so there's a lot of variables, and the tech support guys can, rather than me give you 100 different ideas from the different machines, they can work through it for your specific machine. Okay, and we already have a link up above that has the tech support resources, so the phone number that you can give them a call there. All right, so those were, oh, hang on, Mike, I skipped your question. When doing applique, how do I get my pattern off my design? Are you talking about like if you want to go get the cut line to be able to go cut it? Hopefully that's what you mean. You can type in if I guessed right. Okay, so I'm going to draw an applique. So the applique, if you use the applique tool, it's right here. I'm just going to do it as a square for simplicity. Okay, so this can be whatever shape you draw it as, right? If you use the applique tool, which is what I just did, which is this guy right here, you can go File, Save Applique Outline, and then from there, you can save off if you're going to use trimmers or a cut system or something that uses an SVG. You can save it off as an EPS. I usually save it as an SVG and go open that in Illustrator. And you can save it off to whatever file you want, and that will save there. Now, if you did not use the applique tool, all right, so let's say you created it manually. All right, so let's create a manual applique. Again, I'm just going to do a rectangle. So what did I do? I used my walk tool here. I clicked on the square. I did a left click and a left click. I drew a rectangle. I'm going to turn this off. So that's my placement, copy, paste, Control C, Control V, give it a new color. That's my tack down. Control C, Control V, give it a new color. I want that to be a zigzag. So from there, I'm going to hold the Control key on my keyboard. Control changes it from whatever I have selected here, and it's going to change it to whatever I click on. So Control, click on that. So now that's a satin stitch, but I want it to be a tackle. And let's make that 30 points. Okay, so then I'm going to copy and paste that guy. Control C, Control V. Change it to a satin, and let's make it wider. And we can give it another color if we want. Okay, so I've got another applique file. So how do I save this off? Well, a few ways. I tend to just copy it, Control C, and you copy the item that you want to cut out. So I want this plain old rectangle. I don't want the satin stitch. So I just did a Control C, new file, Control V, file, save as, and you can save it as your SVG, your EPS, whatever format you want. And that will save that pattern file out, that shape out for you. Okay, so Mike, does that help? So it's kind of a one-step process if you do it with the applique tool. You know, just save applique outline. If you do it manually, you've got to save that individual item out. All right, and we do have a video there on different on cutting applique. All right, so Mike, let me know if you have more questions there. All right, let me quick look to see if I missed any others. We talked about that one. We talked about DesignShop and laser alignment. Okay, so Mike, that helped. Great. Okay, alphabets. Okay, looks like I covered everything that was typed in. So let me go back here. Okay, so that was all the questions we had sent in. I'll remind you again about the Share Your Melco Story drawing that we have going on. I think the drawing is supposed to be the 14th, I believe. It's listed on Melco's Facebook page, so probably Instagram, although I don't have Instagram personally, so who knows. But go ahead and send in your stories and win some cool stuff, or be submitted to win, and we'll have some fun there. All right, let us know if you have any questions. If there's things you want to learn about, you can send them in. You know, they're different. We have an applications email, which is meant for, to help answer if you have application specific questions. So be sure to send any questions there. For DesignShop Talk, if you you can use that same applications at Melco to ask about, sending questions for these talks. So it would be helpful when you send those in to put in the title, DesignShop Talk. It's a little bit hard to sort through all the emails to know which ones I'm supposed to add to these talks versus ones that are just general questions. So if you can, put DesignShop Talk or something like that in the title, would be helpful. All right. I don't see any other questions, so I will call it a day. We will be back next week. I really need to do it on Thursday next week, so hopefully that works out. Yeah, I know it's getting a holiday season, getting a little crazy, so hopefully you guys are having fun, keeping busy. Time for that time of year, wind down on the sports for my kids anyway. Thankfully, we'll get a little bit of a break before the January wind up for regattas and soccer hell. Tournament season, basically. So you guys have a great weekend, and I will be back next week. All right. Talk to you then. Have fun, everyone. Bye.